"I never took the sheriff for the marrying kind," Will said as he drove the buckboard along the main drag. He had placed his hat on his head after they left the sheriff's office and walked to the livery barn to collect the horse and buckboard, and now he held it tightly pressed against his scalp as the wind threatened to carry it away. Ellie was glad her own hat was pinned to her hair. The dust blew around them, and she held her hand in front of her eyes until they had left the street and started along a dirt trail. In the distance she could see the mountains Frank had told her about, and in front of them the ranch houses and cattle. "I'm still surprised he didn't mention me. Is he a private person?" Will nodded. "I guess so. He's friends with Mr. Hobbs, but he doesn't really socialize all that much." Ellie frowned. She had thought she would make new friends here in Broken Spur. If Frank was unsociable, that was unlikely. "Mr. Hobbs?" she asked. "Henry Hobbs. Owns a real big spread out of town, and he's expanding his land all the time. He's running for mayor, too. Very important feller in Broken Spur." "And he's friends with Frank?" Will shrugged. "I guess so. I see them together a lot. The sheriff doesn't really talk to me about it. He doesn't really talk to me about much at all. When he does come to work, he usually does the reports and looks after the prisoners in the cells. He sends me out to do the arresting and keeping the peace. I don't mind, really. It keeps me busy. Sitting in the office with the cells full of drunks gets tiring after a while." "Do you get many drunks?" "Yes, ma'am. Mainly cowboys from Mr. Hobbs' ranch coming into town and letting off steam." "Sounds like a busy job." He shrugged. "It can get that way, sure." "I expect the sheriff is away from his house quite a lot then, if it's so busy in town, I mean." She hadn't expected that Frank's job would be so demanding. "Well, not really. I haven't really seen much of Sheriff Patterson for a while. He does stuff for Henry Hobbs and leaves the town to me, mainly." "Why would he do that?" "He has his reasons, I guess. Here we are, ma'am. This is the sheriff's place." He pulled on the reins and the horse came to a stop. "Well, thank you, Will." He jumped down and helped her with her bag. "Take care, Miss Sheridan." Then he turned the buckboard around and headed back into town. Ellie stood looking at the house. It was a large 2-story with a porch out back and a view of the fields and mountains. It was more idyllic than she had dared to imagine. She walked past the stables, wrinkling her nose slightly at the smell of horse manure, and stepped up onto the porch. She knocked on the door. Frank would be so surprised to see her. There was no answer to her knock. She rapped on the wooden door again, harder this time. She heard a sound inside the house. Sounded like a groan. She placed her ear on the door and listened. There it was again. A groan. Was Frank sick? Suddenly worried, she tried the door. It opened and she stepped inside. The smell in the kitchen was unmistakable. Whiskey. "Frank?" she called out. "Who's there?" came a slurred voice from the room to her left. She went through the doorway to discover a small sitting room and a man sitting on the floor, his head propped against the side of an armchair, his eyes bleary. In his hands he cradled a whiskey bottle. "Who are you?" he asked, blinking. "I'm Ellie Sheridan," she said. "Ellie Mae, it's me, Frank. Come in and have a drink." Ellie folded her arms and looked down at the man she had dreamed would be her husband. The dream had turned sour.